Hi, I'm Tom Landon. The program you're about to watch was recorded live at the historic Grandin Theater in Roanoke. Since we started the Echo channel, we've made every effort to record as many Hoot and Holler storytelling shows as we can. If you appreciate seeing programs like this one and the fact that we make them available online and on demand to a global audience, I hope you'll consider supporting Blue Ridge PBS by becoming a member. These programs aren't cheap to produce, and we're actively seeking underwriting to support the recording, editing, and distribution of Hoot and Holler so that we can continue to make these heartfelt and personal tales available to those who are unable to attend them live. If you'd like to learn more about sponsorship, please drop me a line by email at tlandon@blueridgepbs.org. And enjoy the show.
Blue Ridge PBS and Echo present Hoot and Holler, a live storytelling event recorded at the historic Grandin Theater in Roanoke, Virginia.
This one. I met this amazing human at Bristol Rhythm and Roots. And he has become quickly a favorite. And I love that he keeps wanting to come back. He was born into a long line of people who kept and told stories, handing down tales for generations. He can tell you all kinds of details about his fifth great-grandfather, his fourth great-grandmother, his third great-uncle, and so on down the line. Imagine his surprise when he got all grown up and discovered there's not really a market for things he knew, and his skill set was assuredly not in high demand in the modern workforce. So he took to telling other people's stories, finding work in the only place that would have him, at a newspaper. He found himself right there at home, yes, newspapers, right there at home in the journalism world, where they don't pay you well, but at least everyone hates you. He wrote this, by the way. It was a place, though, where college-educated blue-collar workers who are too lazy to do real work and too stupid to make real money can hide out, which is what he's been doing for the past 2 decades and change. He's also an incredibly brilliant storyteller. Welcome back, Mark Sage.
We were 16, maybe 17 years old, and invincible. Dangling off the front of Scotty's 1978 Dodge pickup truck with a retrofitted 440 under the hood. We were bored and fed by a 4-barrel carburetor. Sitting on that hood at 2 o'clock in the morning, I shared a finger or two's grip on that ram's head ornament with my buddy Dan. As the American night screamed by, Scotty hung his head out the driver's side window and shouted out the miles an hour in increments of 10. 70 there at Thompson's store, 80 at the crest of Whiteford Hill. And as we rocketed down that long slope toward home, 100 miles an hour. Our feet were on a rusty bumper. The wind was stinging our eyes. Now was not the time to let go. Several months later, maybe a year, I don't remember exactly, I went off to college. Scotty and Dan went to work and jail, and one of them eventually found his way to the cemetery. Point is, we all lost touch, particularly the one what went to the cemetery. I don't know what Dan is doing with his life now. Hell, I don't know what I'm doing with mine most of the time. But I graduated, I found a job, started a career, got married, and moved back to the mountains, an old man at 26. Shortly after that, in 2001, we had our first son. Our second come along 20 months later, and because we were running out of room in that little house on the side of a mountain, we had to put a stop to all that birthing and baby making. My wife became a stay-at-home mother, and that seemed to do the trick. But there we were, a family of four, trying to scrape by on less than $30,000 a year. Our feet were on a rusty bumper, and now was not the time to let go. I went to work at a newspaper about an hour south and west of where we live there in Atkins, Virginia. And when I went in to interview, I figured that I wouldn't like it very much. It turns out that I was correct. I didn't like it very much. In fact, I hated it. I despised it. I hated the look of the place. I hated the way it smelled. I hated the company. And I hated the 100+ mile a day commute, most of the time taken in a beat up old pickup truck that didn't have brakes or a clutch or some other somewhat essential piece of equipment. I simultaneously feared getting fired and prayed that it would happen. And it didn't. But on my days off, I would wrap a finger or two around my son's tiny hands. And man, it was all worth it. I get full. I get overflowing full. I get ready to pop full. And the next day, I'd trudge on out to that pickup truck and I'd pop the clutch going down the hill on account I didn't have no starter and formula's expensive. And I'd drive on back to work. I gave up on vacations. I didn't get sick. I worked and I worked and I worked. And I was happy when promotions came, gladly trading some hours for a little bit of change, anything to keep our heads above water and give us just a little bit of breathing room just till the kids could go to school and my wife could get back to work. Meanwhile, the kids' hands drifted farther and farther from my finger. Things sometimes got better over the years and sometimes they got worse. And they got real worse in 2008. That was the year of the global financial crisis when the entire economy flatlined across the world. It created some really tough times and some bad days, but it was also the good old days. Because back then, when another Great Depression threatened to bring back soup lines, all of us was in the same boat that was swamping. Trouble is, most everybody else had the good sense to get off of that boat right quick and find safe harbor. I stayed in it for 12 years. 12 years with no vacations, no sick days, and no raises. It was brutal and it took a toll on us. It particularly took a toll on my understanding of how smart I was and my self-confidence. But time moved on, as it does. And in 2019, word came around that them long-awaited raises was on the way. I was a supervisor at the time, so I told the people that worked for me what they would be getting. Most of them were getting 5%, few of them getting a little bit more. It was a good day. I could feel my world fixing to change. In my mind, I'd done spent that money. I was ready to become again that kid wrapped up in the American night with no fears and no worries. The next day, my boss called, and sure enough, I was getting a raise, 0.5%. I said, I didn't hear you very good. Did you say 5%? And he said again, 0.5%. So it turns out I had heard him pretty good. Now, in my mind, In my mind, I said, well, you may as well keep that. And in my mind, I called him some names that are also body parts. But with my mouth, I said, as in 0.5%. And he said one more time, he said 0.5%. And he enunciated every syllable very clearly and with a little bit more hostility than I think was completely necessary. That moment, as my mind was packing 2 kids to go off to college, broke me. I've never actually had someone literally pull a rug out from under me, but I believe it would feel a whole lot like what I was feeling at that moment. I was falling, but up, as if gravity had just stopped working. And I understood right away that my feet were still on a rusty bumper, and now was not the time to let go. But we've come on down the road 5 more years, and things, the whole world has changed another again. My kids are grown and mostly flown and out doing their own thing, and my wife is straight up killing it. She's like that 1980s commercial. She's bringing home bacon and frying it up in the pan and doing all that sort of thing. And I met Lee Hunsaker and all you people. So tonight, I unwrap my finger from around that Dodge Ram Howard ornament. Tilt my head back into the American night and lift my feet off of that rusty bumper. Now is the time for me to come back. Now is the time to let go.